So Brooke Wheeldon-Reece is a mother of two and the president and CEO of Cyprus Initiative, Inc., which is a three principles based non-profit organisation. And she's also the co-author of the Spark mentoring curriculum, which I'm sure we're going to speak about today, which is currently being taught to over 1,000 children in Tampa and around the world. So yeah, I wanted to mention as well, Brooke is in Florida, I believe, and Helena Roth lives in Sweden, and she's a mother of two too, and she's a professional coach, has her own consultancy. And as a result of her interest in the power and possibility of education and learning, Helena was one of the initiators. I'm really curious about this as well. I'm going to talk about this, the Swedish movement. I'm not even going to attempt to say it in Swedish, but it translates in English into hashtag School Spring. And that was born on Twitter in February 2013. So as I say, really, really looking forward to kicking into the call with these ladies now. So, I don't know who wants to begin. I don't think we talked about that earlier on, but whoever wants to kick off. The way I've been starting these sessions with people is for the audience to get to know you a bit and to understand why you're here even. I'm speaking on these calls, and I didn't say that on this session, but you've both been nominated. We put out nomination requests quite a long time ago, probably a year ago, and had lots of people nominated to come along and speak to us. So you guys were nominated, and you're here with us today. So just want to hear a little bit about your journey, I suppose, a bit of your story, and how you're here talking to us about education today. So who would like to kick off and start that?
Okay, I guess I will. So I came across this understanding through a community presentation on the Modelo Project. And at that time, my husband was going through a deep depression based from a reaction he had to his brother's suicide. So I didn't really understand what my husband was going through, but I knew the connection that I heard at the Modelo Project, the presentation that they did. There was a connection to what my husband was going through and to what they were saying. And they really, in that presentation, they didn't even really explain, the quote unquote 3 principles, but I could just tell that there was something in that presentation that spoke to me. There was something that they were saying that could help my husband. So I followed the lady out of the door and said, I want to know more. And through that, I got the opportunity to learn about this understanding, and it had a really deep impact on my husband. And so just by me coming home and kind of floundering over my words on what I was learning, he heard something really deeply, and he came out of a quite, what I would say is an intense depression, where he was hearing voices to all of a sudden he realized it was just his thinking. And when that happened, I kind of had to take a second look. So before I was, I thought, oh, these are nice ideas. I can see how this could be helpful. But when my husband really had a turnaround, it forced me to take a second look. And through that second look, I was provided the opportunity to work at the Cyprus Initiative, where I am now. And my work has always been in prevention education. So what I saw so clearly was what this understanding provided was the missing link in prevention education. So I spent years in the classroom talking about drug and violence prevention, but always kind of knowing, well, I had all this information when I was growing up, and I still made certain choices. So I am teaching it, but something's not landing right. And the more I took a closer look at this understanding, the more I realized, oh, that's the difference. The missing link is your thinking, and how your thinking can create your reality. So you can have all of the knowledge in the world, but if you don't know that you are creating your experience, you could still miss a whole lot. So that's what we're up to at the Cypress Initiative. And a little bit about myself.
Lovely. Thank you, Brooke.
Mm-hmm.
So how about you, Helena?
Well, like you say, I have my own firm. I'm a consultant, and I consult in the pharmaceutical industry. Basically, that's where I sort of come from. So why am I here talking about education? And it's because my kids were in school, and when my oldest, who's now 17, when she started 4th grade, I became involved in the parents association at that school. And that was a real eye-opener for me, because I suddenly understood how thrilling learning is. You know, there's so much that you can learn. So I really dove headfirst into school systems and you know, curriculums and the best methods and talking to teachers, etc. And sort of in the same sphere of time, I also discovered Twitter, and got a little bit both awed by the ability that Twitter, at least at that time, had of making it possible to connect to so many people all throughout both Sweden but also the world. But also a little bit frustrated, because the school debate in Sweden, and I think it's the same in most, at least Western countries, is a lot of sort of, you know, if I like grades and you don't like grades, then I'm right and you're wrong, and we just sort of throw dirt at each other, right? So it's not very constructive. It doesn't really, you know, move forward. I'm just sitting here on my flank protecting myself, and you're sitting over here on your flank protecting yourself. So I started to tweet about the need of a spring in school, sort of paraphrasing the Arabic spring a little bit. And it actually started, the school spring, which in Swedish is called Skolvåren, was born on Twitter on a February evening at 10 p.m. In 2013, when we were a couple of people tweeting and saying, well, hey, let's get together and talk, you know, like really talk instead of sort of fighting over different positions. And we turned out to be 130 people who met up in June that year. And that sort of just kept on going. So the School Spring, which is, it's not an organization, it is a movement of people that can sort of dip in or dip out and be interested. So it's more of a platform where you can hear different voices. And I think the common thread to it is a desire to connect the spark in education, I guess, you know, to really make something more of it. And one of the questions that we ask is, why school? Which is something that we ask, not saying that school is bad, you know, but rather actually getting people to stop and think, what kind of society is it that we're creating? What kind of society is it that we want to live in? And is the school system helping, or is it not? You know, so really sort of going deep into that. Do we still have the best way of setting up the system that in many ways is similar to the way it was set up 150 years ago in most Western countries, when sort of modern school systems in the way that they are today was born. So that's a little bit of why I'm here, I guess.
I just find that fascinating that Twitter became it's kind of how you create a community.
Yeah, it is. And I have to say that some of my absolutely closest and dearest friends were with me on this journey, and we have daily contact. And you know, I would trust them with my life. And these are people that, you know, we tweeted or chatted and stuff for a couple of months before we actually met for the first time even. So it's quite amazing. And it's sort of at the same time as this happened, I've also, like you said, Sheila, I've trained to be a professional coach. And so now my work is sort of part nonprofit and sort of things that I'm interested in. And part of it is my sort of the consultancy that I do for pharmaceutical companies and such. Yeah.
Fascinating. Just, I've been saying on these calls, this spark, that's what we're wanting to do, is spark people's interest in how, and inspire people, how can they be doing stuff in their community. So it just shows, just sitting at your computer using Twitter, that can be a way to do it too. It doesn't have to be physical. Love that. Thank you. Brooke, so I think what I'd love to do is hear about the Spark program, if you would be kind enough to share about that. I think that's really, really interesting.
Sure. So the Spark program has kind of grown, much like Helena was saying, as just kind of an idea. So when I came on board, the Cypress Initiative was already in a few classes, teaching this understanding to a few classes. And from my background in curriculum development, I saw clearly how if we wanted to reach a large amount, the work we do, and we still do one-on-one in classrooms in the Tampa area, is so meaningful, and I could do that for the rest of my time and just be fine with it. But what I started to see was if we wanted it to be more widely accepted, it needed to be in kind of a form that schools understood, that schools were used to seeing. And so we created a curriculum around what we were teaching in the classroom. And at first it was almost for my peace of mind, right? So as a curriculum developer, I needed something, like it was almost uneasy for me to not have something in writing. And then once we started developing it, the funniest thing happened is when we finally had kind of the shell, we just took it to schools, and we'd say, here, we have a program. And it was almost as if it took us having to explain what we were going to talk about to the heads or to the principals out of the equation. They were like, oh, character education, great, come on in, be in our classroom. And so it was this magical form that let us bring the formless into the classroom. And it's just, once you're in the classroom, it's anything can happen, right? So you can talk about anything or use whatever is in the curriculum and then go off on your own, use your own examples in your own real life. So it's really been just a wonderful marrying of teaching the principles and talking about it in a way that schools and academics can really understand and attach themselves to. So we've gone from 2 classes when I started, and we're in, I think this year we're in 24 classes in 12 different schools and just in the Tampa area, and everywhere from teaching students that are gearing themselves to be teachers themselves to alternative schools, where one alternative school we're in, it's 2nd through 12th grade, and the only reason they're in that school is if they've had a alcohol, drug, or sexual violent crime. So as astonishing as that is, it's even in 2nd grade, some of those little kids are in that school for those reasons. It's just amazing to see them just, that spark in them. So once they start to understand where their experience is coming from, things kind of level out, even in their learning. So much like Helena was alluding to, like even the way they learn and how they are, they open up to math and English changes just a little bit, and the relationship with the teachers and the parents.
I get curious. Yeah, I get curious when I hear you speak about the Spark program. Um, what's the feedback that you get from the people that you're the people in the classroom, the pupils of various ages? Then I understand.
Yeah. Well, I think that what's funny is you can be kind of in this understanding and here it's vastly different from the adults in the classroom versus the kids. Because kids are kind of like, oh yeah, that's cool. Next, you know, because they don't see the huge implications of what's happening because they have this understanding. Some of the older ones do, but certainly not the second graders or the fifth graders. But the adults are the ones that will share huge insights. But I think one of the stories that's sticking with me most recently is one of the boys where we talk about listening to your spark, and your spark is going to give you answers even when you feel like you're backed into a corner and you don't have control over your circumstances. Your spark will guide you and tell you what to do and give you solutions and give you answers. And he came back and he told us, well, his father came home and was drinking and was drunk again, and he knew that if he and was going to be violent with him. And so he kind of knew, he told us he knew that was going to happen and he couldn't control that circumstance. But knowing what he knew about state of mind and about how if he could not react to his father's state of mind and stay in a calmer state, he was able to take the fight outside so that neighbors could see and that it stopped faster because someone else got involved. And then because of that, he wasn't arrested this time. Whereas before, he got in trouble and his father would get in trouble and then he would be taken away from his siblings. And so I just thought that was such a beautiful example of we're not taking kids out of their circumstances. Some of them are in horrific circumstances, but we're giving them the information, just how they work, and then they can react to their circumstances better. They can know that even though they might feel like they're backed into a corner of, I don't have control over my life, right? I have all these adults that are making decisions for me. Just for him, just having that understanding of his father's state of mind and how he couldn't control that, and knowing he had this wisdom inside of him that would guide him, and staying in that peaceful state, he didn't get himself in any more trouble. And he actually was able to stop it sooner. So I don't think he would say, oh, this is such a life changer, but it is, like him having that knowledge at 16, that will take him so far. Whereas adults, we can look back and go, man, I wish I would have known this and see all the implications in our lives. Kids, they just kind of see it and then get on with their life, which I think is almost more beautiful than us adults kind of mulling it over all the time, right? Going, okay, what does this mean now? And what can I do with this understanding now? Kids do what Sid said and they just go live.
Yeah. And I think maybe that's one of the reasons for that, is that sort of almost the younger you are, the closer you are to your innate well-being, the closer you are to this thing that we're born with living life. And then as we grow older, we sort of get all of these layers on top of it. So when I'm 40 and I learn, where my thinking comes from and how it affects me and what it does to me, there's a lot of layers to peel off before I can get to that just living part of it.
Yeah. It's funny because we just started developing a younger curriculum, and we realized really quickly that it was over way faster than even the teen curriculum. It's like, you can only say so much to little kids, because you're right, and we had those conversations in the office that they're so much closer to it. There's a lot less undoing to be done.
We have a question from a viewer So Charlotte, could you unmute or bring on Jenny Hansen, please? She's got a question she'd like to ask you directly, I believe. The miracles of technology. Who knows? Find out where she is in the world. That'd be good as well.
I've got
Here
her
we go.
on. Hello,
Jenny.
are you there? No, this is Charlotte. I'm looking for her.
Yeah. No, Jenny's there. I can see her. Well, I can see her. She's muted at the moment.
I cannot. There she goes. Unmuting. Okay. Jenny, are you there?
Jenny, you've muted again.
She must be. Go ahead and unmute yourself again. All right, I will unmute you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Jenny, are you there?
I see. Sorry.
There you are. Oh, gee, there she goes again. Interesting. All right, Jenny, I'm going to unmute you one more time. Do not hit the mute button, please. Hello?
Jenny, can you hear us? Jenny?
She is unmuted.
Yes, I'm here.
There you are.
There you go. Do you want to ask a question to Brooke and Helena?
No, sorry. I pressed the button.
Oh, I think she's pressed the button by mistake, perhaps. That's okay. Maybe that. Okay.
Uh-oh.
So, Charlotte, I think she's done that by mistake. So, she raised her hand by mistake. Good. Okay. Well, I thought I had a question from her. Helena, I was going to ask you something, and it's gone out of my mind now. Oh, I think it was about what you were saying earlier on about the Twitter discussion, and you were talking. There was talk about how this, because I think this is so true. You know, our educational system's based on something from 100 years ago, or at least, no. So what is the feeling about that? What's the discussion been around that? I mean, what is it that people are proposing? I suppose that's what I'm interested in. How you talk about the three principles, if you do, you know, and that sort of thing.
Well, I rarely talk about the three principles as three principles. I much more often talk about how I perceive life and why I perceive life the way I do, and sort of talk about it from a personal standpoint, much more, I would say. But when it comes to sort of me being immersed in the Swedish school debate, it's been very interesting to see that the more I'm unpeeled, the less engaged I get in the drama, you know, in the ring fighting. Like the less interested I am in doing that, and the less interested I am in sort of trying to beat somebody else into getting my point of view. It's just not interesting, right? So I've learned a lot just from my own experience of me slowing down, of me no longer having the sense that I have the right answer and I need to tell it so that everybody else can find out, right? So I've been very interested in talking to people about what they see as a part of the answer to why school. What's the purpose of schools, right? And I don't think that there is one answer, really. I think that it's always going to be multifaceted. And more than anything else, I don't think that there's one way of doing it that fits everybody, because we are different, right? Everybody has different ways of being in the world. And we need to sort of take more consideration of that than sort of a lot of the schooling is done. And I look around and see these amazing examples of both schooling and homeschooling and unschooling in all various forms. And it's just and all across the world. And it's really, really interesting to sort of see, and to see what works and what doesn't work, and that it's never going to be one formula that will work everywhere. Right?
Yeah. I was just reading our tagline for this call is the possibilities of education being the foremost tool in co-creating positive and sustainable change within the lives of children, parents and educators. Now that's funny, that's not something I thought about, parents and the educators as well. So not just talking about the children here, talking about parents with the ripple effect, I guess. Or or do they come in to get educated too? Is that something that maybe, I don't know if Brooke wants to speak to that. Is that something that the Cyprus Initiative does too? Is work with parents, or is it just the kids?
We do when the parents are available. I think that's one of our biggest challenges is getting parents involved. It happens when they see, how do I say this? When a very involved parent, and not in a bad way, I mean like able to be involved, because a lot of the populations that we work with, parents, maybe it's a single parent, they have 3 jobs. So there's, even if there was a wanting to be more involved, they just don't have the time to be involved. But we have big availability. It's one of the areas that I wish we could expand on more, right? We've tried various things. We've tried to be at conference night. We've tried to bring in food. Food always brings people together. We've tried different things, but it really is, as a parent of 2 young kids myself, I know what a stretch it is to get to an activity outside of what's in my viewpoint. So yeah. But I had a question for Helena. I was just curious, what have you seen come from your group?
Well, I think I see opened minds, I would say. And I see opened minds both in myself and sort of the people that have been closest to me, or, the ones that have been doing a lot of this, who has had the Twitter account and, getting people to write for the blog, etc. But I also see open minds in people within the school system that mostly then are on social media. They've started, because when we've had our away from keyboard conferences, it hasn't been, this is for preschool teachers, or this is for elementary, or this is for high school. It's been for everybody, and it's been for everybody within or outside of the school system. So people have been talking to other people who are not in the exact same position. I'm teaching mathematics in year 8. And then I only go to a mathematics conference, speak to mathematics teachers, but no, it's been much wider. So just the people that have been involved, the diversity there has opened minds and have connected people in the most fantastic way also. There's been, people in different ends of Sweden, which is fairly long country, sort of collaborating on blog projects with their pupils and classes and stuff. And I also see that it has been a way of connecting to people, who are in positions in the government. The education minister attended our first Away from Keyboard conference before he was the education minister. We have people in the I don't know what you call it, sort of the different departments and stuff. And you have the unions. So it's really has been a melting pot of everybody, like me, I'm a parent. I am one of those engaged parents, right? I don't have teacher training. That's not what sort of why I'm interested in this. So open minds, I would say, is the thing, and sort of yeah, open minds and connections that would not have happened otherwise, right? So it's been really fantastic to sort of to be a part of this very loose sort of movement, right? We don't have a manifesto. This is what we're doing and this is how to do it, you know. We have a question and we're interested in hearing what people have to say about it. And you know, the blog, we haven't been very active in the past year, but the blog has had, I don't know, 150,000 viewers. You know, so I mean, there's a lot of people that have been involved in this in one way or another, either participating or by reading and talking and just sort of opening up.
I love that. I think what you just said is what at the heart of why, or what this understanding allows people to do, and that's just open up and connect, right? So it's not the understanding, but it is what it's kind of like an output of the understanding. And when we open up and we connect to one another, so many problems get solved. So many solutions come up. So I just love that.
And there's one more thing in it. It's like, you know, it's been a little bit of creating the impossible. You know, like, how do 4 or 5 people get 130 people to come to a town in Sweden for 2 days where we have, you know, we have facilities to be in and stuff, and we have no money, right? You know, that's not possible. Yes, it is. It actually is possible. So I think for a lot of the people who have in one way or another been involved in this, our limits, our views, our beliefs about what can we do and what can't we do, it's just woof, you know, it's just exploded. It's just gone. It's not interesting anymore to sort of sit and try to do the best you can in this little box. Just get it out of the way instead, and you know, anything can happen and we can play around with it, right? There's no right or wrong answer in how you do this, because that's not what this is about. We've just been experimenting, seeing what works, what doesn't work.
I love that too, because in the classroom and at the office, what we've been talking about between us as a team lately is talking more to the kids about not about how to make better decisions so they don't get in trouble, but how to point them towards your belief system. You know, whatever you think is possible is what's limiting you. And once even kids see, oh my gosh, my box is not near as small as I thought it was, then they start creating things that they never thought were possible. And that's just exciting. And then for the teachers to see the kids do that, it kind of expands their beliefs, right? Expands what they think is possible in the classroom. And then all of a sudden the teachers show up differently. The teachers are teaching them at a higher level, because they can all of a sudden say, oh my gosh, these kids can do better. They can do more than I'm expecting out of them. I can do more. So I love that.
I love that too. I never thought about it that way around, that the kids would inspire the teachers to step up the level, or I don't know if it's step up, but expands their view of the kids. I think that's. Is that something that you you hoped would happen, or was it kind of a surprise thing that happened along the way?
It's definitely a surprise. I think when I talk to people in this community, like the urge, I think, or maybe the common way to go is let's get the teachers or the educators first or the administrators first. And for whatever reason, not because it was strategic at all, we just always went to the kids. And what we started noticing was, okay, we'd teach a class, and then all of a sudden we'd have 3 teachers sitting in the class while we're teaching the kids. Or this teacher would talk about how she was going to quit teaching, but she decided to stay because of what she learned in our classroom. And what we really realized through that was, it's something about when the teacher doesn't think that there's anything that they have to, teachers are always on. They're always being asked to learn something new. They're always being asked to take on more work. They're work way harder and expected to do way more than possible. But when they're just kind of sitting there, it lends an open mind, right? It lends them to be a little in a state of mind that we kind of want people to be in when they're learning this. And they take notice of things that they might not take notice of when I'm standing in front of them trying to teach them the principles. And so the other part of it is our mentors go in knowing that the kids have these boxes probably of limits. And when they start breaking out of those limits, the teachers are genuinely surprised that kids start doing some of the things that they're doing. So it's kind of it's right in front of their eyes. They can't say it's not happening, right? It's like when my husband came out of his depression, it was right in front of my eyes. I had to take notice. It happened. Now, what are they talking about? So yeah.
So how long is the program, the Spark program?
We try to stay with them the entire school year. So
that's about 9 months, is it? Something like that.
Yeah. And we don't always teach a lesson, so a lot of times we do one-on-one mentoring with them. We'll teach them something, and then we'll try to see if they need. It's kind of like one-on-one coaching almost with kids.
Yeah, you do it one-on-one. It's not actually, for me, I imagine there's a classroom with all the kids in there, maybe 20 or 30 kids. I don't know how many you have in your classes in America, but I know when I was, in the UK, it was that those sorts of numbers.
Now it is. So we'll teach a lesson to the class, and then maybe the next week or however it's structured. It's structured differently in different schools. We'll have voluntary one-on-one mentoring. So a lot of times what we find is students may not be willing to speak about certain things in front of the entire class, but they'll talk one-on-one. So our mentors will go in one-on-one and meet with the students. And then they'll do another lesson, and then they'll have another one-on-one. So even though the lessons, I guess, don't last, they wouldn't last once a week throughout the whole year. The program lasts once a week throughout the whole year.
Cool.
And we like to do that too, because we like to see especially the teens, they'll get it, right? And then they'll go off and do their own thing. Life will happen. So we like to, lay a foundation and then be there when they go, yeah, but, but my mom just did this. Yeah, but, it wasn't my fault when my teacher gave me an F for cheating and I wasn't cheating. Yeah, but, and so then we kind of walk through those types of situations. It's more like the implications of, now that you know this,
it's like bringing the real time life into, like how does this work now that you have this going on? Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, for sure. Makes a lot of sense. So there's you're working with how many schools at the moment, did you say?
I think there's 12 schools.
Wow.
If I have that correct.
And you aren't that many staff, are you, either, in the Cyprus Initiative?
There's 5 of us. We stay busy.
Yeah, and it's a not-for-profit organisation, the Cyprus Initiative too, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you depend on, do you get funding? Do you depend on donation? How does it work?
Yeah, so I write grants, and we do get some grants. We sell our curriculum, so that's all of our curriculum sales, all of our profits.
You sell it?
Yeah, so we sell it to 3 principals. People buy it sometimes, but school districts. So any kind of money that we get from the curriculum goes back into our community programs as well. And then just business trainings and coaching. So any service that we charge for goes back into our community.
So can you tell us more about if say another school district buys the curriculum, how do they use it? Do they use it the way you do? What do you get any feedback back, or it's like, there you go, buy it, bye.
No. So, for example, we have a school that's in the neighboring county to ours this year that purchased it. So the school purchased it for their teachers, and then we've spent this entire year training their teachers on how to use it. Now, we're lucky enough to be able to do that because they're right next door. We have there's a nonprofit organization that wrote our curriculum into one of their federal grants. So it's like a 5-year research grant. And so we're training their staff to use it. And it is kind of a navigational type thing now that we're in this, we have this, because we kind of have to gauge when they're ready and know that we don't have the final say. So once they have it, they can do whatever they want with it. But we definitely offer a lot of training and a lot of support.
Because the teachers have got to have an understanding before they can actually share. That's the place you start from, I imagine.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've got to run. Do you run them through that same curriculum, or do you have a separate training program for the teachers?
Both. So we do kind of an introduction to the principals, and then we teach them the curriculum and why it's written the way it's written. So we go through the curriculum as kind of a training guide. And it's so interesting to see how teachers will read something on paper and just automatically kind of gear it towards what they already know. And then it's kind of just a re-guiding back to, wait, well, how is this compared to what you've just learned? So it's definitely a interesting navigation.
And that's one of the things that I find interesting, and we were almost touching on it before, is this: sometimes I have to unlearn in order to be able to learn, right? Because there's things in the way that stop me from being able to hear sometimes. And again, the older we get, chances are the more stuff there is in the way, making it harder for me to just be open to hear something. And that's one of the things that I often talk about is the, if I'm listening to get if I listen for that which I already know, to just get reinforced in what I know, or if I listen for that which I don't know. What's new here? What is it that I haven't heard before? It's very easy to sort of tend for the other one, to go for the reassurance, right? Well, I already know this, I'm good. And then, I'm not open for the stuff that, wow, I've never heard that before. I've never thought about that before.
And I think that's one of the things this understanding points to, is the magic of that, right? That's where the magic is in what I haven't heard before. So people start to understand that a little more. It's like you want to know that more. You're more interested in the unknown rather than what you already know.
Yeah. And I think that's interested specifically in the schooling context or education context, because so much of sort of the basis, the foundation of education is knowledge. You need to know, and you need to be good at what you know, and you need to be able to sort of, you know, get it out of you whenever you're asked a question. It's just supposed to get out there, right? But and then it's interesting because a lot of sort of what then happens is, if you actually take a step further, you go into research, then it is about, again, what I don't know, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise you wouldn't be researching. So it's interesting that there's sort of this, you know, when small kids, they want to know, why is this and why is that and everything, right? They're very curious and want to have more input. And then we're sort of slowing down again. And then a few people go into research and sort of really get into that questioning mode again. But a lot of us don't, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that just points back to why when we're in the classroom, you see more of an impact. So the school district that we're working in, we're actually sending our mentors in the classroom once a week for the teachers to be trained. And one of the heads said, well, why don't we just have a training? You know, I'll give you 2 days, we can have a training. And I just intuitively knew they're going to search for stuff that, like you're saying, that they already know. But if they're just sitting there having a free period while someone takes over their classroom during the year, they're going to be more apt to hear something that they don't know.
That's beautiful.
I think that's a fantastic strategy. We could use that in all circumstances, all sorts of areas, couldn't we? It's that sending people in to learn something that and puts a lot on our minds, isn't it? It's like, oh, I've got to get this, I've got to get this, I've got to learn this, I've got an exam, and all the things that we do to ourselves. I must listen, I must take it in, I must make notes, and yet sitting back listening quietly, or not even listening, really, just being there, thinking, oh, I'll just skive off for a period or whatever. I'll just kick back and see what's happening. That's just, I mean, that for this,
Yeah.
that's, isn't it? That's
well,
great.
it's why when my mentors will go into a classroom and kids will have their heads on the desk or whatever, and the teacher will be like, all right, get up, you know, and we're always like, no, let them stay there. And sure enough, after a while, you'll say something and you'll just see a kid's head pop up and go, because they heard something.
Yeah.
So a question for me, because that's one of the things that I think is limiting, at least sometimes in sort of formal education, is this, you know, you go into a classroom and you have 40 minutes, and as a teacher, I want the kids to know X, Y, and Z, and then we're done and we can go away, right? And again, then you're into the mode of, I have to teach them this, they have to get this, and whatever sort of tangents might come out of it, we don't have time for, right? So is that, how do you and your other mentors, Brooke, sort of look at your curriculum? Is like, checkbox, we need to get through this, and this, otherwise it's not, otherwise we haven't done the job.
Yeah, no, and it's funny because the schools hate it, but we're always, you know, when we really get into the detailed conversations of what they're going to get out of it, the fact that we say, I don't know, it's going to be good. Like, but if some of them don't get it, that's okay. Like, we're not going to force anyone to do anything. And I've even had, you know, a conversation with an assistant principal that I've become pretty close with. And he'll go, I mean, I know that you're going to say it doesn't matter, but it would really be nice if they all got on the same page with this, you know, what you're teaching. And, you know, it's having those kind of honest conversations. Well, it's not really, if what we're saying is true, it's not really up to us when they get it. So or what they get, or how much they get, or what them getting it looks like to you, or how that looks to you. Because it could still look like they use their wisdom to get out of a certain situation, but do something to get them in trouble, right? It could still look like they ran away, but then using their wisdom for whatever reason or whatever's going on at home, but then they got in trouble because they ran away. They're still using their wisdom. So what it looks like is very different than what it looks like to you. So it is. It's definitely not a check the box. They're gonna learn. I mean, yeah. And that's very different than education, right? Because we have goals, and even in our curriculum, we have goals and objectives. It's laid out like a curriculum, but there is a softness about it. There's a special timing that's beyond us.
Just looking at the Q&A, but so Rose, who's in the UK, says sometimes it's just planting seeds that might grow later and often do.
Yep.
It's true for everybody, isn't it? It really is.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that when I ask myself the question, why school, this notion that everybody who's 12 needs to learn algebra, or whenever it is you're supposed to learn algebra, but it's like, and so regardless of who I am and what my interest is, and where my mind goes naturally because I'm curious about something, if you're 12 you need to learn algebra, period. It's like, but maybe there's some kids that can do that at 8, right? And there are some that won't be able to do it until they're 16. But the way it's set up, everybody needs to learn it at the same age, at the same time, in the same place, if I'm generalizing, right?
Yeah.
But and again, it's like we've come away from or maybe we never were there. I don't know. This fact that we are different, and not everybody needs to, like you said, Brooke, not everybody needs to know it the same way. It doesn't necessarily need to look the same way when people get something. And so there's a lot of things that I think get more interesting if we sort of just, again, open up. Does it have to look the way it does? Maybe it doesn't. How could it look instead? Well, I don't really know, but we could try something, right? And being open for that.
Brooke, I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
No, I was just going to reiterate the point that I love that's one of the side effects of this conversation. It's just, it opens people's minds. It gets people curious.
That's what we're hoping with this conversation too. to open people's minds and just spark inspiration for people. What's possible, and this one we're particularly talking about education, and I want to go back to the fact I think I'm still blown away by the fact that you sell curriculums, because just me being naive, I had no idea that you could sell curriculums. So there you go. And would you sell that curriculum to to anybody, I suppose? Would you sell it to anybody?
Yeah, I mean, it can't hurt anybody. There's nothing in there that can be done. Yeah, it can't hurt, right?
Is there a stipulation that, like you said earlier on, that they have to go through a whole, so perhaps you're thinking when I say that, the 3 principles, somebody who's only got an understanding of the 3 principles, or a teacher? What if it was somebody else that didn't match either of those categories?
Well, I think when we talk about selling curriculum, so schools, and I just know this from my past experience because I worked with a curriculum company. Schools, when they buy curriculum, they don't just buy curriculum. They always buy curriculum with training. So if a school is going to purchase curriculum, they're not going to, or like the grant that we were written into. that's just kind of a given. So if a school buys curriculum, they buy with training. If a organization writes curriculum into their grant, I mean, there might be like one few and far between, but the protocol is buy it with the training, and the training's available. Yeah, so it's not kind of a highly data school. I've just always been in professional development with curriculums in my past, so a school is not, it's very unlikely for them to purchase a curriculum that they know nothing about without the training attached to it.
Right, I see. Okay.
Now, could a teacher certainly could go and buy it. And I think it's written in a way that if someone picked it up off the street, they would certainly learn something. Their eyes would be open.
So somebody
I'm curious now.
Yeah, somebody's listening. Well, this is it. I am too, and that's good because somebody's listening to this, and I think I'd love to take that into school somewhere, or I mean, maybe it doesn't even have to be a school. I don't know. It could be anywhere, couldn't it? I guess it doesn't have to be a school per se. Like a youth club or where kids are, and somebody decides they could just purchase that from Cyprus and go ahead and start using it. That's really cool. And how would somebody find that? Just by contacting you, I guess.
Yeah, just on our website. It's available. cyprusinitiative.org. There's tons of information on there.
Yeah, I imagine. So there's another comment, comment. Pete Bailey. This would really show introverted kids that quiet is good. Do either of you have anything to say about that?
Well, I did sort of interviews at a school in the town where I live to talk to both the teachers and the management and pupils, to get a sense of where are we at, what's working, what's not working, etc. And there was this one young lady who was a pupil there, and they were sort of early adults, most of them. She was introvert, quite obviously, and she had so much. She saw so much, and it was so interesting to sit and talk to her about it. And I asked her that specific question. I asked her, do the teachers and your fellow students and the management here, do they utilize everything that you see? Because you're not the one sort of standing there at the front, having all the light being shined on you, right? But rather, she was observing and she drew connections and everything. And this was a good place to be. But she still said that, no, not really. And so I encouraged her for all that I could, to really take into herself how valuable that is, to be able to see, to have that ability to just sit and take in. And then she was verbal as well, so she could voice it out again in a very good way. But I think that it's something that, it's starting to be more apparent for many of us, and there's the Quiet Revolution and other books on introversion and extroversion, etc., that is helping people to get to realize that even here, it's not one way is the only way to be, the other one is no good, but we need the entire spectrum. We need people who are really, really good at being quiet and listening and analyzing things. And we also need the people who are good at speaking and just having, whatever they're thinking about come out of them. But for me, I've grown more quiet. I've slowed down in many ways, even the way I speak, from having this understanding, because I listen differently.
Great. Brooke, do you have anything to add to that before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would say is I used to label myself as an introvert pretty heavily. And one of the things that I've really seen is sometimes I'm quiet and sometimes I'm the loudest one in the room. And it's like the label might have gotten in my way for a long time because that's just who I was. It doesn't seem as real anymore.
No, and I think that's one of the things that that's one of those layers that I've been peeling off, is this belief in personality, that I am either or, and that could be anything, not specifically extrovert or introvert. I'm a morning person or I'm an evening person. Well, sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not, right? So it depends. It's in the moment. And
there's value in both of them, right?
Yeah. And there's value in both of them, and sometimes one suits the situation better than the other one, and I'm able to choose, and not being so firm in my beliefs that this is the way I am really, again, opens up. So that has really been sort of the central theme here.
Yeah.
Opening, right?
As an introvert, I used to have this strong, because I've always trained people, so I'd have this strong belief that I would be like incapacitated after I would run a training, because as an introvert, it took all of my energy, and then I would have to refill. And that's one of the things I've noticed is, wow, that's not necessarily the case. Sometimes it is, but it's not. I don't have to plan my life around having to have like a 5-hour break after I'm with people like I used to.
It's funny, we've got one of our calls coming up is about labels, dropping the labels. I can't remember what the title is exactly, but it's how labels aren't helpful, really, I guess. Dropping the labels, seeing what happens.
Yeah, and I think, again, not that we should go into that perhaps, but sometimes again, it can be helpful as well, as long as I don't let it box me in, thinking that as I am this, I cannot then be anything else. But yeah, sure you can, right? So it's again having that fluidity to life and to learning and to being open and curious really makes life a lot nicer to live, I have to say.
Makes for a richer life in some ways, doesn't it?
Yeah, in many ways, I think.
Well, ladies, I'm looking at the time and I think we've got to wrap up. So thank you so much for being here with me and with everybody else today. Rose has just sent in, thank you both for the interesting discussion. Yes, thank you. It's been